Greetings, our Frederick Riddle here with another Christian News and Views, episode 72. This is Tuesday, and we're going to be looking here at some of Ukrainian news that has come out. And so the title of this is Ukrainian Troops Losing Ground as Trump Talks of Ending War. So we're starting to get into now the early stages of Trump's attempts, at least, to end the Ukrainian war. And again, I have to always remind you of this. This is an article put out by the Associated Press, and it's not usually in favor of Trump at all. So take it. You almost have to read between the lines, every line. But I'm going to try to do that for you and to read this and then make my own comments about it. It says here, this is coming from the Pokrovsk region of the Ukraine. It says, a dire shortage of infantry troops and supply routes coming under Russian drone attacks are conspiring against Ukrainian forces in Pokrovsk, where decisive battles in the nearly 3-year war are playing out, and time is running short. Ukrainian troops are losing ground around the crucial supply hub, which lies at the confluence of multiple highways leading to key cities in the eastern Donetsk region, as well as an important railway station. Moscow is set on capturing as much territory as possible as the Trump administration is pushing for negotiations to end the war and recently froze foreign aid to Ukraine, a move that has shocked Ukrainian officials already apprehensive about the intentions of the new U.S. president, their most important ally. Military aid has not stopped, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said. And there's more on this going in, but the article, you'll have to look it up yourself. It gets a little bit lengthy here. But we've already covered some things that I think that's important for me to comment on. First of all, at this time of year, this is not unusual reporting. At this time of year, it always seems to me anyhow, that Russia is on attack and disaster is looming for Ukraine. There's always different reasons. I've mentioned before about the slow walking of weapons by the United States under Biden, and President Trump has only been in office for a short time, so he hasn't had a chance to really speed things up there. So, in fact, he's only been numbered in days, really. We're finally into February, but he's only been president for a couple of weeks now. So things are moving slowly in that sense, but also moving fast. And President Trump is making some moves, and we'll just have to try to keep up with him and see how these things are going to do. But it's also true that this time of year, Ukrainians seem to find a way to not only survive, but to recapture lost ground. Now, right now, they're losing ground. But, and like I said, it always seems to be around this time of year when the ground starts to thaw out and the troops can start moving again, that Russia, who has had time now to plan and move and gear up, you got to remember, they still outnumber the Ukrainians as far as troops go. So they can pick and choose where they want to attack. And that's the only thing that really seems to change is where they make their attacks, not necessarily the fact that they do attack. Now, they have learned a few lessons along the way, so that's something that you have to contend with, too. The biggest difference is the United States. It appears that President Trump is letting both sides know that the negotiation table is the only way to go. And so that might explain the freezing of foreign aid. But I want you to understand that he did not stop the military aid. And we'll get that in a moment. But right now, I emphasize the fact of the negotiation table. I think that has been his plan all along, and I think he wants both parties there, and he wants them pretty much on an equal or even basis. Russia has the most troops, and so they can move them around a lot easier than the Ukrainians do. The Ukrainians have a smaller territory to defend, and so that allows them some flexibility there. But it's basically, are we willing to lose this so we can save this and so forth? And it's a typical type of thing in the war. We've seen it in wars in the past, not just Ukrainian war, where the defender has to maneuver and make some sacrifices sometimes. And so that's a Ukrainian issue. They have managed to be very flexible and be able to move their troops around enough to stymie the Russian advance. And they've actually made some gains over the years. And so we'll see how this goes. Now, the interesting thing to me is that they still hold the Russian territory that they took. That's going to prove, I think, very important in any negotiations. So I do agree that the time may have come to start talking. Putin, um, let me put that part off for a moment. Let me still focus on Ukraine before I get to Putin. Ukraine still has the will to fight. It does control some Russian territory, as I mentioned, and has the backing of her European allies. Don't discount that. I think that I'm not privy to how Trump thinks, but just watching him from the distance, I think that he is kind of like counting on the Europeans to do what they've been doing, to continue to do, to support Ukraine. And like I said, we have not stopped our own military aid. And so that is something that is going to prove a strength. It's not to the advantage of the Europeans to see Ukraine fall. And so they're going to move maybe even a little bit more and a little bit faster. And that would play into Trump's hands pretty well, I would think. Then we look at the Russian side of this whole thing. That's not covered in the article itself. It talks about how Russia's doing this and Russia's doing that. So you got to look at this in context. Russia has internal problems. It cannot even protect its own territory from Ukrainian attacks. Ukraine has shown that it could reach very far into Russia and penalize Russia. They can't even attack Moscow. They've shown it, and they've, like I said, they have taken Russian territory, and so far have been able to hold on to it. So Russia has not been able to stop them. And then there are pressures on Putin himself. Some coming from his armed forces. Others are coming from the citizens themselves. The citizens don't have a lot of rights. They can't. If they go out and march and protest, they could find themselves in prison, or maybe with a bullet in the head. So they have to be very careful about that. But there are some internal pressures on Putin. My own personal feeling is that the crown on his head is not very secure right now. The ground under his feet seems to be shaking a little bit right now. He might survive. He's a very crafty, wily person. But in the end, I think that his erratic behavior, and there's some question about his health, these all play in the hands of what he might consider his enemies. But these enemies are internal enemies, and there may be Ukrainian underground forces involved in it. We don't know, or at least I don't know. But the thing is that he has all these things that he has to contend with, And when you have a dictatorship such as Putin has, the crown is always uneasy. You're very suspicious of everybody, including perhaps your own family. When you study the Bible and when Jesus came on the scene, Herod was not the most secure king there ever was. He was the most powerful, perhaps, but not. He even killed some of his own family members just to protect his throne. So this is not new. But the thing is that Putin, I believe he's on shaky ground. And so I would not be surprised if a rebellion takes place. Not a wide-scale rebellion. It could be just military leaders. I have an imagination, and I have pictured him calling a meeting, or the generals themselves asking for a meeting. So he agrees with the meeting, and he, wanting to be on the safe side, he has in his brings in his office. He brings in security personnel to protect him, and then the generals start to enter into his office, and as they do, the security personnel are there ready to protect the president, but when they go to shut the door, it is suddenly pushed open and armed forces come in. And they either disarm the security forces, or the security forces actually end up uniting with them and forcing Putin to resign if they don't resign him themselves. That's just my imagination at work, but I would not be shocked at something like that happening. That's what happens in dictatorships. Oh, and by the way, no, Trump is not a dictator, and nor is he trying to be a dictator, as the liberals like to say. Not even close. But Putin is. And Putin, I think that he's playing the cards he's got, and he's very crafty, and he may survive all this, but I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't. So it is an important time in this war, and we will all of us be watching to see how things work out. If I was a gambler, I'm not, but if I was, I'd put my money on President Trump. I think he's got an ace up his sleeve that we don't know about. The Ukrainians may not even know about. And he may be keeping it very close to his chest, so to speak. Sort of like a card player that holds their cards real close so that no one can spot, look over like that and see. It's something that he's got that ace up his sleeve. We shall see. It's very interesting to watch. He is a man who has a plan, a man who knows. He's even written a book about the deal, how to make a deal, and he's very, very good at that sort of thing. And we shall see how that works. Now, moving on to another article in the paper. This one here is the European Union leaders scramble to avoid friction with the U.S. and Trump. And this is coming out of Brussels. Again, it's written by the Associated Press, so you got to read it with a little bit of caution. And also you have to have some awareness of the context that this is all taking place in. So it says here, after 3 years spent trying to deter Russia from destroying Ukraine, European leaders grappled on Monday with how to respond to a major ally who appears determined to start a trade war or even seize part of their territory. So in the art of, I've never read the book, The Art of the Deal, but I've heard from other sources that this is how Trump lays things out. He's got them thinking now about some things. And this is my opinion I'm giving right now, right in the midst of the article. But the whole trade war, the idea of seizing, making Canada the 51st state, marching in and taking over Greenland. These are interesting things that I don't think they're even need to be considered. But you don't know. See, that's the whole thing. He's got them on edge. and they don't know what he's going to do. And so they have to prepare, and they have to work that all into their thinking as they respond. Get back to the article. Uh, it would be a cruel paradox if, during the time of this direct Russian threat and Chinese expansion, the UN and the United States may end up in a conflict among the allies, said Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, whose country currently holds the EU's rotating presidency. Since taking office last month, U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to impose tariffs on EU imports and refused to rule out military force to take control of Greenland, an autonomous territory of NATO ally Denmark. Trump has also mystified Europeans by showing little sign of how he intends to end the war in Ukraine within 6 months, as promised, let alone in a day, as he boasted while campaigning last year. We have to do everything to avoid this totally unnecessary and stupid tariff war or trade war, the Polish Prime Minister told reporters in Brussels, where European Union leaders met for talks on boosting and improving military spending and ramping up Europe's defense industry. And so it goes on and gets involved. Let's see. So here we have European Council President Antonio Costa noting that the European Union has stood beside Ukraine in defense of its borders. Said of Greenland, of course, we will stand also for these principles, all the more so if the territorial integrity of a member state of the European Union is questioned. He acknowledged, another man, a person, Fredrickson, actually. This is, let's see, let me back up here a moment. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen. She left open the possibility that the American military might be used to secure Greenland as well as the Panama Canal. We need Greenland for national security purposes, he said. Actually, it's a he. No. Oh, that was the he there is Trump. Excuse me for that. Frederiksen said she has great support from her European Union partners on the fact that everybody has to respect the sovereignty of all national states in the world, and that Greenland is today a part of the Kingdom of Denmark. It's part of our territory, and it's not for sale. So basically, just getting into my commentary now, they're very nervously watching this current state of affairs between the United States, Mexico, and Canada. And now you can throw in Greenland into this whole thing. And so the whole thing is, President Trump has them right where he wants them. He's letting them know that there's a new player on the field. See, that's been them all along in Ukraine. So now the United States is getting involved in it the way it should have been under Biden. But Biden just sat back and let them do their thing. So now we're flexing our muscles a little bit. Now, both Mexico and Canada are already making conciliatory moves to bolster their borders, which is something that the president has wanted. There is now a pause in tariffs as both these countries focus on negotiations with the United States. President Trump's aggressive maneuvers seem to be working. Well, I think the same, you could put this on the bigger stage too, of not only Canada, but Greenland as well. Again, these are bargaining chips, not the end game. Now, I'm talking about what I believe, because I believe that Trump, some people argue the point, but I believe that Trump is a master negotiator. I believe that's one of his very strong points, and I think that he has actually shown that he has what you might call he knows how to finesse people. He knows how to put people on the defense, put things out there that they may say the same thing I'm saying. They may say, excuse me, changing my. They may uh, they may actually be saying the same things I'm saying or thinking the same things I'm saying, but because of their positions in government and so forth, their own personal responsibilities, governmental responsibilities, they have to consider that these may be more than bargaining chips, that he may actually intend to make Canada the 51st state. He may actually intend to send troops into Greenland. Do I believe that? That Canada's going to be the 51st state? No. Do I believe that he's going to send troops in to take over Greenland? Nope. But then again, I don't have the government responsibility. I'm not the head of Denmark. I'm not the head of the European Union or any of those other parties involved. They have to consider this. He has put these out there for them to consider. And once they have to consider, you just heard it just now, they're already talking about it. They're worried about it. And they're trying to formulate a united plan. Well, that's what he wants. He wants to bring them to the table with himself. And he wants to have a playing field in which the United States benefits. He's not out to destroy the European Union. He's not out to destroy Canada or Greenland or Mexico. He wants them to do things. In the case of Mexico and Canada, he wants them to stop illegal immigration. In the case of Canada and Greenland, he has some economic issues that he wants to equate. And that's where the tariffs comes in, and where talk about Greenland. Greenland also has military applications in it. Russia and other forces are up in the Arctic area there, and that can be proved to be a problem. And so he's looking at the bigger picture, and he's marshaling his own plans, if you will, and moving different chips. If you're playing chess, there would be chess pieces, moving them around. And the idea is to get them to play the same game he's playing, to play them on his terms, which it looks like to me he's doing. And when he does that, now the advantage shifts into his position, and he can control the table. He can influence their actions. Actually, I think that the European Union is doing some right things now, especially in regard to the Ukraine. They have more to lose than we do right now. But they have more, because if Russia takes over Ukraine, then that opens up Europe itself a little bit. And so, it's the so-called domino theory. And so they have to focus on that, and they have to focus on the United States. And so they need to have a united front. And if you look at recent history, the European Union has not lived up to its promises when it first was created. And part of the reason is that the give and take between the different states, they're not really united. It reminds me something of the United States prior to the Civil War. You had the United States government, and then you had individual states, and you had states' rights. And that many people think that the war was fought over slavery. The real war was fought over states' rights. And the United States won that war, and now there is still such a thing as states' rights, but they're much more subdued than they were back then. And I think that's what you're seeing playing out over in Europe, is that whether he intended it or not, he's forcing them to consolidate, to get together, and be stronger together, so that they can face him. And that could very well be part of his plan, for them to be a stronger entity, because for them, we want them to be able to protect their own lands, to protect them against a Russia that is increasingly looking like a paper tiger, but they do have the nuclear weapon. And you have an unstable man at the head of the Russian government who could accidentally push that red button. And so they have to have a united front against him, and they need to have a united front when talking about economics and things of this nature. So I think this is all good. Again, I'm not privy to what's going on in the mind of Trump or in the mind of the political leaders over in Europe. I'm watching from afar, just like you are, but that's my opinion. That's my take. So, do you like to listen to what I have to say? My take on what's going on in the world? Well, if you like this channel, why not be sure to subscribe? If you don't already subscribe to it, right down below here, why don't you subscribe? When you do subscribe, you not only ensure that you have access to both my podcasts, the Christian News and Views, which you're watching right now, and my other one, Becoming a Published Author is Fun, which is for those who want to become authors, writers, published authors. And so I have a podcast there where I give out free advice, tips, things of this nature. But on top of that, when you subscribe, you also are encouraging me. And when you do subscribe, that makes me all the more confident, makes me more excited. Well, I don't know how to get much more excited than I am, but it does. And it makes me want to be able to provide to you things such as information, encouragement, and inspiration that can help you in your own personal lives, and your understanding of how things are going on in the world, a balance to what you're going to get in the newspapers and on TV and radio news outlets, but also if you're a writer, to help you do that as well. So hopefully this has been helpful to you, informative at the very least. So you have a great day, and I will see you in the next episode.